This video is sponsored by Ye Old Prop Shop. Didn't really print out the way I was hoping for, but I think we can make it work. Sequels: The Rescuers Down Under, Fantasia 2000, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and Frozen 2. Those are the titles of the only sequels Walt Disney Animation Studios has ever made. 4 films. Now you might be thinking to yourself, oh wait, don't you remember all those really bad Disney sequels they made in the 90s and 2000s? And yes, those sequels are really bad, and that's what we're going to talk about today in part. See, I was planning on doing a whole 10-20 minute video on Frozen 2, but I don't think any of you want to hear me talk about that movie for 15 minutes. So instead we're going to talk about Disney sequels as a whole, including Frozen 2, and I'm going to be talking about the problem that Disney has and has had with sequels. But we'll start off with the very first Disney sequel ever made, The Rescuers Down Under. Now the writing for Rescuers Down Under began in 1986, around 10 years after the original was released, and none of the original writing or directing talent returned for the second film, although most of the actors did reprise their role from the first. And the movie was released to okay reception. People thought that the story itself was really weak, but the film was redeemed for the music and the flight sequences, which if you look back were really impressive. During its opening weekend, The Rescuers Down Under grossed $3.5 million, which was below the studio's expectations. And with the lukewarm reception of a sequel and the Disney Renaissance on the horizon starting with The Little Mermaid, Disney decided that it wasn't in their best interest to create full-blown theatrical sequels to their original movies. But like I said, when the Disney Renaissance rolled around and Disney churned out hit after hit, they decided that maybe sequels were a good idea, but not theatrical ones. But the original animation studio had their sights set on the Disney Renaissance, so they outsourced these sequels to Disney Toon Studios, a studio that was known for making DuckTales, the movie Treasure of the Lost Lamp. And that, everyone, is when Disney's sequel problem truly began. After the success of The Little Mermaid, Disney ordered a television series of the same name to air on CBS. And with the Disney afternoon era going strong with shows like DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, and Tailspin, Disney ordered an Aladdin animated series that would shepherd its transition from movie into television. And in order to get the series going, Disney turned to Disney Toon Studios, the studio that, as I said earlier, was responsible for the Darkwing Duck movie, to make a sort of pilot film for the Aladdin series. And that sequel would be titled Aladdin: The Return of Jafar. You could probably tell what happens in the movie based on the title. Except this sequel would not be released in theaters. It wouldn't even be aired on television. The Return of Jafar was instead straight to VHS. It was also stated that the movie could be completed faster and way easier than the original Aladdin if they had a smaller budget and released it directly onto video. And you can definitely tell they had a smaller budget. The Return of Jafar was notable because the entire original voice cast returned to reprise their roles from the movie. Everyone except for Robin Williams as the genie. Instead, Dan Castellaneta was brought in for the role, famously known for his role in another Disney series, The Simpsons, as Homer Simpson. Yeah, it feels weird to say that now. And when the film was released, unsurprisingly, people touted it as a knockoff of the original Aladdin and not nearly as good. But to be fair on this one, Disney was just going for a quick sequel to launch the television series for Aladdin. They weren't really going for Walt Disney Animation Studios quality, and it shows. And though Return of Jafar wasn't very successful critically, commercially, everyone agreed that it was pretty good, I guess, fine. But then, just 2 years later, Disney Toon Studios would release the third Aladdin movie, Aladdin and the King of Thieves. And I have to say, for me personally, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. And someone very special came back for the third movie who was not in the second. Robin Williams returned as the genie, after receiving an apology from Joe Roth, who was the chairman of the Walt Disney Studios from 1994 through 2000. Robin Williams did not want Disney to use his voice in order to market products for Aladdin, and Disney did not keep their end of the deal. But after the apology and a little, money on the side, Robin Williams returned to the role of the genie and made Aladdin and the King of Thieves probably the best Disney Toon Studios movie ever made. And there's some catchy songs in there too. And after King of Thieves successfully ended the TV show that began with Return of Jafar, Disney Toon Studios decided to make a ton more sequels. Like, a ton more sequels. Lots of people say that these Disney Toon sequels are horrible, and, well, I mean, they're not good, but they're definitely serviceable. Okay, they're pretty bad. And the studio closed its doors on June 28th of 2018, with their latest film, the third entry in the Planes trilogy, being cancelled. Now, most of the movies put out by Disney Toon Studios as sequels to the Disney Renaissance movies were pretty bad. There were a few that had their redeemable parts, and dare I even say, were pretty good. Like I said earlier, Aladdin and the King of Thieves is probably the best one they've ever made, and one of the best Disney movies in my opinion. There's one other movie that I think really stands up to the original that it's based on, and that's The Lion King 2. Like Aladdin 3, it contains songs reminiscent of the first movie, and they're very well written and well done. The animation for a Disney Toon Studios movie doesn't look half bad, and I think it's funny that with the original Lion King being based off of William Shakespeare's Hamlet, they decided to base the second off of William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, quite literally. It's basically the same plot. But I think one of the best original movies Disney Toon Studios made is one that I'm sure you're all familiar with, a Goofy movie. Now, a Goofy movie has recently seen a bit of a resurgence in the Disney and the film community because of the nostalgia for people like me who were children when the movie came out. Oh, never mind, 1995. I mean, there were probably a bunch of kids with the VHS of a Goofy movie lying around their home when they were very young, and that's how I know it. And we've even seen Disney kind of leaning into the Goofy movie love, releasing Goofy movie merchandise and having throwback nights at Disneyland with very popular Goofy movie characters. If for whatever reason you haven't seen a Goofy movie yet, check it out, it's on Disney+. But now let's talk about the true Disney sequels, the four that the Walt Disney Animation Studios themselves, the original Walt-founded studio, made. Now, we talked about The Rescuers Down Under at the beginning of this video, so let's move on to the next Disney sequel, Fantasia 2000. Now, when Walt Disney released the original Fantasia in 1940, he intended for the film to be a living art project. At first, he planned to have the film on continual release forever with new segments replacing older ones, so audiences would never see the same movie presented to them twice. Walt also originally wanted Fantasia to be a precursor to 4D movies, with a new technology called Fantasound, which was supposed to make it sound like there was a real orchestra in the theater playing the music. There would also be certain different lighting and curtain cues to help boost the immersion in these scenes. But of course, these Fantasound systems were too expensive and you couldn't really move them effectively between theaters. In 1984, when everybody's favorite Michael was the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, Roy E. Disney pitched the idea of a second Fantasia movie to him. The movie wouldn't enter production until 1991, but when it was released in 2000, it was met with critical and box office acclaim. Everybody agreed that this is what Walt would have wanted to do with the Fantasia title. Fantasia 2000 was smashing records here and there, left and right. The movie became a global phenomenon almost overnight. I'm just kidding. I almost had you there though. It wasn't to that degree really, but Fantasia 2000 was a big success both with fans and critics. It also set a brand new record for the highest gross income of any IMAX movie before. So this is Disney's first experience with a sequel going relatively well, and the movie won its fair share of rewards to boot, so a big success in the sequel department. But then, everyone, silence. For 18 years, Disney did not move forward with any other sequels, not even for Tangled, which should have gotten a sequel, but it's got a really good series now. Until March of 2017, Disney finally announced the title as Ralph Breaks the Internet, or more appropriately, Ralph Breaks the Internet WreckIt Ralph 2. What a disaster. In the following year, Ralph Breaks the Internet was released in theaters and it did really well in the box office and critically. But looking back on Ralph Breaks the Internet, I really do think it's one of Disney's more weak movies in recent years. It takes the whole premise of the original video game characters coming to life and says, we don't really care about that, let's talk about the internet. Which one results in a bunch of weird, out-of-touch, cringy internet jokes, and two, immediately dates your film. We're not going to be able to watch Ralph Breaks the Internet in 50 years the same way we do with Tangled or Frozen. Even Big Hero 6, I think, which heavily relies on technology to tell its story, will still be a fun piece to watch 20-30 years in the future. But Ralph Breaks the Internet isn't that, and I honestly think in the third act the movie completely falls apart. The villain, if you want to call it that, isn't really built up at all throughout the rest of the movie. I think the animation, as always, is beautiful and there's a wonderful message tied into the movie, but aside from that, internet culture moves so fast that I think the movie is already outdated just 2 years later. Screenwriter Jennifer Lee did not return for the sequel, and it shows. She had taken on a bigger spot at Walt Disney Animation Studios, and I think this really reflects on the movie movie. It's just too topical and it didn't age well. But of course, there are other Disney sequels that suffer from this issue, but I think that honestly, oh, I gotta go, I'm late. Goodbye, Miko. I'm off to the movies. I can confirm it's even better the second time. There's a lot of sequences in this movie that remind me of Fantasia, be that 2000 or the original, especially this sequence right here. It looks like it's found in Walt Disney's Fantasia. The animation is expertly done. And I gotta say, it's probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest sequel Disney has ever made. And while yes, I think there are some flaws, there are some parts they could have trimmed down and the movie could have been way longer, but that's just me wanting more. Probably one of the best movies Disney's made in a while, and I see people trying to make like script doctor videos on this. I think the script is perfectly healthy. Like I said, this was gonna be a 20-minute long video just me doing this, but I feel like this video that you're watching right now is a bit more interesting. Remember earlier when I was talking about Jennifer Lee being busy on other projects? You can tell that she put her heart and soul into this one. Bob Iger even said that they would not mandate a sequel for Frozen, even though it made them all that money because they wanted the story to stand up. They wanted not only to match the original 2013 film, but they wanted to surpass it, and I honestly think that they have. And it makes me want a Frozen 3 even more, but not if they don't have a story to tell. We know that that's very important. We don't want another WreckIt Ralph 2 Ralph Breaks the Internet situation. What a title. But what about you guys? What is your favorite and least favorite Disney sequel of all time? Even Aladdin and the King of Thieves shows that if there's a good story to tell and the right people tell that story, that the movie can be really memorable, sometimes even surpassing the original. But if you take away anything at the end of this video, I want you guys all to think about how 2020 would be the perfect year to release a third Fantasia movie. The number is symmetrical, it will look good on a marquee, and I don't plan on waiting another 1,000 years for Fantasia 3000. I don't think any of us have that kind of time. So Disney, I know you haven't announced it or even hinted at a third Fantasia movie coming next year, but I mean, it's the perfect time. Fantasia 2020 coming in 2020. I called it. If they release a trailer later on down the line, remember, Disney, I think I will settle for 50% of the film's theatrical run with 1% off merchandising. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, go see Frozen 2. Do yourself a favor. Hey guys, if you appreciate Disney signage like, oh I don't know, this Disneyland entrance plaque, head over to the link in the description to Ye Old Prop Shop. They have all kinds of pop culture and theme park signage that you can get your hands on. It helps support the channel, and because I used so many movie clips in this episode, it wouldn't surprise me if something were to happen to this video. So make sure to head on over there and find yourself a piece of Disneyland, Walt Disney World, or gaming memorabilia. That's Ye Old Prop Shop, link in the description. Hello everybody, thank you so much for watching this video, a bit more focused on the movies rather than the parks in this episode, but never fear, because just in time for Christmas we will be releasing the Offhand Disney Holiday Overlay Special, having to do with all the overlays Disney does in all of their parks and how Christmas kind of started at Disneyland and how it's continued to spread throughout the resorts. So if you're interested in that, make sure to stay tuned, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button if you want to see it when it goes live. And as always everybody, thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.